Hi, everybody, and welcome to Title II Tuesday, brought to you by the Center for Inclusive Teaching and Learning here at UWSP. Welcome back, everybody. As a reminder, last week we covered how to tag your Kaltura files to secure assistance in caption review and remediation to increase compliance with the accessibility guidelines specified in Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act. We also gave you some tips in case you'd like to do your own remediation of video captions. All the instructions for these processes are available in week 3 of the bite-sized remediation guide course that is listed below this video. This week, we're moving on to color issues specified in the You Do It Advantage accessibility checker. Although using color can increase the visual interest of digital resources, remember that not all learners are sighted. Not all can distinguish different colors from one another. Students with low vision, blindness, and color blindness may face barriers to learning if color is not used correctly in your Canvas courses. This week, we'll concern ourselves with color contrast and the use of color to convey information. The You Do It Advantage accessibility checker flags 2 errors associated with the use of color in Canvas: insufficient text color contrast with the background and potential use of color alone to communicate information. Note that it only flags these errors in Canvas, not in your uploaded documents. Let's begin with insufficient text color contrast with the background. This contrast is the difference in color value or darkness between the background and text objects, which influences how visible they are. The greater the contrast is, the greater the visibility and accessibility. The standard we are required to meet, according to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 AA level, is that normal-sized text, which is 12-point text, should have a contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1 compared to the background. Large text, which is text over 18 point or over 14 point if it's bold, because of its size, can have a slightly lower contrast ratio of 3 to 1 to be compliant. If you want to meet a higher accessibility standard, you're welcome to do so. Keep in mind that the guideline for the AAA level specifies a 7 to 1 contrast ratio for normal text. So where are you likely to find contrast problems in your Canvas pages? Well, wherever you've used color text, highlighting, or some type of background fill. The second error related to color use that You Do It flags is potential use of color alone to communicate information. So, for example, imagine providing a list of 6 study questions for consideration by students while they complete a reading. Maybe you only want them to provide their answers in a homework assignment to 3 of these questions, so you might highlight them or show them in blue text, telling them to submit their answers to those questions that are highlighted or shown in blue. The information about what questions to answer, because it is only provided by color, may not be visible to all of your students. The Web Content Accessibility 2.1 AA standard indicates that you need to add another means of conveying the relevant information to students so that it's not carried by color alone. Where are these problems likely to show up? Anywhere you've used color text or highlighting in Canvas could be detected. Now, let's go on to how we are going to fix these errors. Begin by accessing the Sandbox course that you've established for completing your remediation work. At this point, I'll give you a useful tip. If you're the sort of person who uses a lot of colored text and highlighting in your Canvas pages, assignments, etc., so that you use it more than once on every page, you'll save yourself time if you begin your remediation by going through each of your pages, assignments, etc., to review how color is used. This is because in the long run, it will minimize all of your clicking and save you time. If this applies to you, start at the page link in the blue course menu, then access each of your pages one at a time. Enter the Rich Content Editor. Review your use of color. If you've used color alone for emphasis, whether highlighting or text color, you can fix it directly. For color contrast, the Canvas Accessibility Checker provides a heads up that you may have an issue with color. Look for the little accessibility person in the emojis that are beneath the editor. If there's a number displayed next to the accessibility person, that means that there's a potential problem. You can click on the accessibility person to enter the interface for the Canvas accessibility checker, and this is going to display more than just color errors at this point. You can't filter through the errors here, but you can click through to find those that are related to color contrast and fix them in this interface. After a manual review, or if you know that your use of color is not ubiquitous on every page or assignment, just run the You Do It Advantage Accessibility Checker. This is found in the blue course menu on the left of your screen. If you previously scanned your course and not changed anything, you don't need to scan again. But if you've adjusted, remediated, or added any additional items since your last scan, definitely rescan. Once the scan is complete, access the You Fix It tab. Sometimes the list of errors to fix seems incredibly overwhelming, but that's why we're doing our bite-sized remediation. We aren't going to fix all the problems this week. We're only going to look at two. The two color issues noted earlier. So we want to filter our results by these errors. Click the filter button next to the search bar. This will create a pop-up menu looking to what you're going to remediate. We're interested in the specific errors associated with color, so we're going to go down to the bottom of the list to the issues, then click into the box to reveal our options. We're going to select potential use of color alone to communicate information and insufficient text color contrast with the background. And bingo! We've limited the output only to the things we're planning to remediate this week. Just click Review to review each of these errors. You can fix them directly from the interface for review. Here we see a great example of insufficient contrast between text and background. The light blue letters in the dashed yellow box are practically invisible to a sighted person. Note that the contrast ratio is displayed and is marked as insufficient in red. You can use the arrows on the background and text color to adjust the contrast, or you can use the color picker. Notice that the contrast ratio indicator goes from red to green when you reach appropriate contrast. Remember to click Save. Now, let's look at some cases of potential use of color alone to convey information. If you've used color alone for emphasis, you can add an additional marker of emphasis, which is making the text bold or italic, directly in this interface by clicking the box. If the use of color is conveying more complex information, it's likely that you'll need to go to the page or the assignment in question to understand the full context of color use and make corrections to the text. Do this by clicking the link above Possible Changes. And this is where you're going to have saved some time by going page by page to fix what you can before running the You Do It scan, since this will prevent re-reviewing mistakes that are on the same page after you've corrected them on the page. Once you reach the page, go into the Rich Content Editor to make adjustments. Consider whether you think the use of color is appropriate in this instance. You can adjust both color and/or add additional textual information for those who can't see color. When you've made it through the list of errors, rescan your course to make sure that you got them all. Note that this is not how you're going to adjust these problems and deficiencies in your documents or PowerPoints, because you can't fix those through You Fix It. Okay, your goal for this week is to check your use of color within Canvas to ensure that you aren't introducing inadvertent barriers to your students' access to information. And that's this week's Title II tip, brought to you by the Center for Inclusive Teaching and Learning here at UWSP. Remember, at CITL, we offer support for course design, learning activities, assessment, pedagogy, and accessibility. Visit our website to schedule a consultation today.